If believing in God and country paid the bills, poor folks would be millionaires. Welcome to the Straight No Chaser podcast, a place where we speak the truth with no filter and no fear. And today, we're diving into something that might make some folks uncomfortable, but it needs to be said, right? Because we're going to talk about the holy alliance between faith, patriotism, and poverty in America. And let me be clear, right? Let me be clear. This ain't about bashing religion or the country. This is about calling out how both have been used, right? Over and over again. This isn't a one-hit wonder type of situation to manipulate, pacify, and exploit the very people who believe in them the most. Okay? That's what we're going to do in today's episode. Okay? And this episode is about how the poorest people are often the most religious and the most patriotic. And yet they get the least in return. Let's unpack the faith, the flags, and all the foolery in between. So, welcome back again to another episode of the Straight No Chaser podcast. Because y'all already know we about to go all deep down, up and through it, and roundabout beside it, because you have to. You can't change this stuff if you're not willing to call this stuff what it is. If you're not willing to call it what it is, because this is not patriotism. This is not what this is. This ain't even religion. It's a lot of things, but I wouldn't necessarily call it any of that stuff specific. Okay? So we're going to start off. Let's talk about church. Let's talk about church. Church has always been the backbone of the poor and working class communities, especially in Black and brown spaces. Let's be honest, especially in Black and brown spaces. And it's where we found like our hope, our community, and our strength. That's where we found it, at the church. But somewhere along the way, that hope started being sold back to us at a markup. And we didn't notice it. But they're selling that hope back to us at a marked up price. And it should be a price that you and me are not willing to pay. But enter prosperity gospel. Prosperity gospel. The message that if you give more, God will bless you. I'm going to say it again. The message is if you give more, God will bless you. And if you just believe harder, tithe more, serve more, that God will open up those doors. That's what they want the poor to continue to believe. But at the same time, Pastor, the preacher, is driving a Mercedes. Yeah. And Sister Williams, oh, she catching 2 buses and still can't pay her rent. That's not faith, y'all. That's hustle. That's a hustle. That is a hustle. Because it goes even deeper. That's the surface level. It goes even deeper than that. Some churches tell people not to question political leaders because God put them in power. Really? Really? So the same leaders cutting food stamps and blocking healthcare are God's chosen? Put the pieces together, y'all, about how they playing with you in your face. Put the pieces together. That's God's chosen. The people who make other people suffer. They tell you to pray for what they're voting to deny you. Well, how would prayer change that? That's not divine, baby. That's deception. That's deception. I remember when Creflo Dollar came along. I don't know if some of you are familiar with him, but he was teaching a lot of prosperity gospel. And I've never been a fan of it because they make it seem like that God is this being in which he's only The only way he can reward you is with money, which to me is kind of odd because that's the direct opposite, technically, of what's in the Bible. But leaders in churches and communities want to tell you, hang on to God. He rewards you with riches when you do the right thing. Well, that's not actually what God says, not riches in the way that man is saying. But see, that's the hustle. Somewhere along the way, they switched out what the true message and what the true word is and turned it into some deceptive tactic to take advantage of the most vulnerable members of our society. That's what happened. Oops, wasted a little tea. I don't consider that faith. Like I told you, that's not faith. That's a business model, frankly. You figured out how to make money hustling people through their own faith. And America's built very heavily on stuff like that. Hustling people on their own faith, that's a huge, big thing in America. That's big business. Big old business. Because you got to understand, church is a business. And church working in conjunction with politics, again, is just designed to keep you in the place that they want to keep you. And understand, church ain't the only place that this happens. Because now we're going to talk about the other altar. Yeah, I know you're like, what other altar? The flag. The actual flag. Think about it. America sold the idea that loving your country means being silent about flaws. Like you're not supposed to speak out against anything you don't like. You're just supposed to fall in line, go along to get along. That's what Americans have been taught. And that's why for a lot of the segment of the population, when you speak out against anything that's happening, you're told to shut up. You're told you're un-American. But frankly, that is when you're showing how much you love your country because you're attempting to hold it accountable for its actions. That is love of country. But instead, America has sold this idea, right? That you got to be quiet. You can't say nothing. They'll hand out flags, though. They'll slap support the troops on everything. They love to put that on stuff. They don't have no problem with that. Support the troops. America. Love my country. But guess what? When those troops come home, they can't even get decent VA care. That's not an accident. That's how the system is set up and designed. You're asking people to make the ultimate sacrifice with their life. But I'm not willing to give you a living wage. I'm not willing to give you health care. I don't think that a lot of people understand that we have active duty service members that are on food stamps. The first time I found out about that, sorry, I had to cough. First time I found out about that was decades ago. When a coworker friend told me, he said, hey, when I was in the service, yeah, I was on food stamps because we didn't have enough money to survive. Wait a minute. I thought the whole point of going into the service was to be able to make a living wage so you can take care of your family, but I had it all wrong. There are people that are sacrificing their lives, but they don't make enough money to put food on the table. That's not okay. And then with the veterans, they make around they make up about 11% of the homeless population in the United States. We have a lot of homeless veterans. With the ultimate sacrifice that veterans make, we should have no homelessness, period, in this country, but certainly not for veterans. But every election season, it's always the same stuff, different day. Same speeches and bumper stickers about how much they love the troops. But when the rubber hits the road, every day of the week, though, that love isn't there. Think about that. When you think about every day of the week, the love isn't there. The love is conditional. I love veterans up until, right? Up until. See, you got to remember that poor people are often the ones that fight these wars that the rich people start. We fight them. They don't fight those wars. They don't even send their children to fight those wars. They're not going to lose their children for that. No, they got options. They have money, resources. They don't have to. But the rich kids, folks, are tucked away in Ivy League schools, right? It's working class kids that are shipped overseas to fight. Yeah, our children are sent to fight for everybody. But then it's rich people sending everybody else's children to fight. See, the rich don't lose anything. We're losing everything. They seem to always be able to come out on top. That's not an accident, baby. I need you to understand it. That shit on purpose. It's on purpose for them to always come out on top. Because if they didn't always come out on top, they'd want to change the game. And that's a fact. If they didn't come out on top, they'd always want to change the game. Wouldn't you? Why would I want to keep playing a game that's rigged against me? Now, I don't mind playing if it's rigged for me, but if I felt like the game was rigged against me, I wouldn't want to play. It's been rigged against us the whole time. Because, honey, they hand you a flag to distract you from the fact that they took your benefits. Yeah, you got that flag because they took your benefits and they don't want you to notice. So while you're going, America, America, they're picking your pocket. That is literally what's happening while you're saying that. They are picking your pocket. That shouldn't be okay. That shouldn't be okay. They shouldn't be able to pick your pocket at all. But it happens because nobody's stopping it. But understand, you've been conditioned to fall in line. It's not an accident. You have been conditioned to accept it as your reality. And you've also been conditioned that it can't change. And none of those things are true. As long as you got breath in your body, you can change things that you may not like about your life. But you have to make a decision to change it. That's the catch. But you also got to understand there is a deep conditioning in America that if you just keep believing in God and in the system and in hard work, you're going to be okay. You're going to rise above. That is the biggest hunk of crock of mess ever. 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 You can work as hard as you would like to work. There's a deep conditioning in America that if you just keep believing in God, in the system, in the hard work, that you're going to be okay. But that's not a reality. That is not a reality. Because it's not just about hard work. It's not just about any of those things. It takes many things to have success in America. But let me tell you, just believing in God and working hard is not going to get you there. I guarantee you that. I guarantee you that. Because, see, we're told as working class members of society, right? We're told to trust the process. Trust the process. But the process is broken. It's broken. It's been broken for a long time. And honestly, they want the process to stay broken. There's no value in it for the people that are benefiting from a broken system to fix it. They want the rest of us to just stay in this spin cycle of a broken system. But we don't have to. But see, belief without action, that's stagnation. There's no growth in that. There's no growth in it. And they know it. There's no growth. And when we start to question what's happening to us, when we start to question why we make more money and have less, when we start to question why our communities aren't getting better, they're getting worse, when we start to look at all that stuff, that's where the problems start to set in. Because the people who are benefiting from a broken system don't want to fix it. It's been exposed. So when you start questioning it, they're going to label you as angry, ungrateful, you're not a believer. It's going to be everything under the sun, but a real discussion about how we got here. Nobody wants to have the real discussion or how we can get out of it. They just want you to have faith. Have faith. Have faith. It's not that simple, because if having faith would equal riches, then every poor person in the world would have riches. That is a lie that you are sold and told. And it's designed to keep you falling in line. They tell you, just have faith, they say. God will provide. But God ain't the one voting against raising the minimum wage. See, God also tells you faith without works is dead. He also tells you got to put in work. So, and if he's giving you information and then you're choosing to ignore that information and do something else with it, this has nothing to do with God. This is what I always say. That's nothing to do with God. Folks in the Republican Party hide behind God as an excuse so you don't question them for their behavior. But that behavior ain't God. No matter what they say, that behavior is not God. Because God ain't the one closing schools in poor neighborhoods or letting corporations poison the water. God ain't, he's nowhere near that. That's all man. It's all man. So when people tell you not to question, I want you to remember one important and special thing. It is not a sin to question the system. That's how you survive. It's not a sin to question it. It is how you survive this system, by questioning and re-questioning and questioning some more. When something doesn't make sense to you, it's probably a reason why it doesn't make sense. There's a reason why it does not make sense. Pay attention to that. But there is a reason why it doesn't make sense. Because they want you so distracted with your religion and your belief in a higher power. Somebody's going to take your suffering away if you just believe, believe, believe. Because if they can leave you distracted with that, you won't demand anything of them. That's what it's really about. I don't want you asking me for anything. So let me do whatever I need to do, right, to make it so you don't ask me for results. Because I don't want to be on the hook to do anything except scare you. That's what y'all got to understand. All of this stuff, a lot of this stuff, again, it is a game. A game. And when you figure out what the game is, then you'll learn how to play it. You'll figure out how to navigate it. What do I tell you guys all the time in these podcasts? That's one of the point of it, for you to figure out how to navigate a system that technically isn't designed to work for you anyway. Yeah, it's not designed to work for us. This system is designed to work for everybody but us, unfortunately. And it's going to stay that way until the people, you and me, decide to rise up and do something about said system. And that's the truth. It's not going to happen because we prayed on it. We have to really make a concerted effort to be like, okay, well, this got to be different. It has to really be a real effort. But we don't really, as Americans, make a real effort. And we should. And we should. Because if we made a real effort, y'all, if we made a real effort then people wouldn't be able to come along and exploit everything that we're trying to do. People wouldn't be able to exploit it, but people are able to exploit it because we're not fully engaged the way we need to be. That's how that happens. That's how people are able to take over your religion, hijack your religion, and use it for their own political benefits. Because is God as cruel as they say and make him appear to be? Because if I left it up to Republicans, God is so cruel, right? If I left it up to Republicans, God is so cruel. He starves hungry children. He doesn't make sure veterans have what they need. He harms the elderly. He causes natural disasters, and he doesn't want anybody to get helped. If I used the logic that these people use, that's the thing. If you use that logic, yeah, you would think God is a cruel God. You would think God is a cruel God. But he isn't nearly as cruel as they try to pretend him to out to be. Not even nearly. It is man who is cruel. It's man who doesn't want to help anybody. It is man who's always thinking about man and what else they can extract from man. Because man isn't always trying to help man either. But they don't want you going back and forth. These elected officials don't want you going back and forth with them. This is the exact reason why your religion is always inserted into the conversation, because you've been conditioned not to question religion. So if I can condition you using those same tactics inside of politics, well, guess what? I ain't got to answer no questions, and I get to do everything I want to do. Do y'all see it? That's how that works. You see it? That's how that happens. And they're very slick and sly with it. It's not something that happens overnight. It happens over time in small little increments where they test little different approaches and see how you respond. We're this far gone now because most people weren't paying attention before. And the line just kept being shifted and moved. Anytime they wanted to move that goalpost, they could move it. And so they did. But understand that when you got the church, doing their thing, right? So you got the church doing their thing, trying to exploit stuff. Then you got your country keeping, catching you up in it, because the country wants you caught up in patriotism, because patriotism is packaged up in many ways like religion. Patriotism in America is treated like religion, frankly, in this country. For you to say that you're not a patriot, it's almost like you said a bad word in church. People look at you, go, what? What do you mean not a patriot? The question is, what is a patriot? People don't want to have those discussions. We honestly need to get back to the core discussion of what is a patriot? Because it certainly isn't somebody who doesn't like their country. A patriot is somebody who loves their country, and they'll also hold it accountable. Patriots will hold you accountable even if you did something that didn't make sense, because that's what they're supposed to do. But I think we went from being patriots to sycophants. America has a lot of sycophants in America. Not as many patriots, frankly. Not as many. But as this stuff keeps going on and going on, you're combining the patriotism with the religion and all that other stuff. Now you start getting into how the politicians are exploiting it, because the politicians come in to exploit it too. The politicians come in to exploit. The politicians come in because this is where it all comes together. See, it can't come together without the politicians coming in too. See? And I know you probably didn't think about it like that, but the politicians come in to bring the plan all together. Politicians know exactly what they're doing, right? They know. The politicians know when they show up at churches during election season, quote a few scriptures, hug a baby, keep it moving. They lean on patriotism to distract you from the policies that harm the very people waving the flags. Because, see, you're so happy. America, America, you're just waving a little flag. America, I love America. But you don't even notice America's keeping you poor. And it's doing it on purpose. Not only is it keeping you poor, it's purposely giving your money to rich people. But America, America, America. That's how they sound. America. I love America. But can you pay your bills? Can you take care of yourself easily and comfortably? I was speaking with a young woman this morning, and she was excited because she's engaged to be married. And she said that she and her fiance were talking about their future and like what they would do and this, that, and the other. And they've decided they're not going to have kids anytime soon. While they would love to have children, they don't think they're going to have kids anytime soon. And I said, yeah, because you can't afford to. She said, no, I can't. She said, no, I can't. I can't afford daycare. I can't afford daycare. And even if I wanted to be home, for one of us to be home, it's hard to really even to afford that because everything's so expensive. So they're not having children. It's not that they don't want to have children. It's just that the system is set up that it's too expensive. So having children is actually a detriment to her progress in her life. It's not an addition. If government wants more Americans to procreate, you got to create a society that works for working class people, but they're not. That's the problem. Problem is they've been continuing to nurture and create a society that's for rich people. Well, guess what? When you do that, you're going to have a problem creating large families because one, rich people don't tend to have really, really large families. And two, even if they did, you're not getting them to work in those factories. You're not going to get them to work in those factories. Period. You're just not. Because the system isn't set up for that. The system is set up for you to work in those factories. Our Treasury Secretary recently, Scott Bessent, he said recently, our plan is to move more high wage jobs out of the country and move more low wage factory jobs back into the country. Who's signing up for a low wage factory job? Anybody know anybody that's looking for a low wage factory job? One of the reasons why they're having a hard time recruiting with factory work is they don't pay enough. People are working those places, but you have to pay them fair living wages. They don't want to. They don't want to pay fair living wages. They want to pay just enough for you to get by, but not enough for you to be able to move on. See? It's all about sustaining the basicness of the system. Like the basicness is not a word, but y'all know what I mean. It's all about trying to survive a basic system. That's what they want for you. Survive the basic system in the best way that you can. In the best way that you can. Because what did I tell you? Religion is used to shame the poor while giving tax breaks to rich people. That's how. And to keep you from talking and bumping your gums, they invoke God to justify the policies and the oppression. Because what they figured out is if they say God's name like Candyman 3 times, God, 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 then you'll stop asking them questions. Yep. That's what they figured out. That's exactly what they figure out. And they say God bless America while cutting Medicaid and defunding schools. Anybody ever seen the movie Head of State? In Head of State, in that movie, one of the characters says, God bless America and no place else. Literally, God, they're not even saying God bless America anymore. They're just like, man, forget y'all. Literally. They're just like, forget y'all. That's what's insane here. And churches help to put Trump back in the position that he's in. So we can't ignore how churches are sometimes complicit, silencing dissent, endorsing candidates, and preaching obedience instead of liberation. A lot of churches, because they want you to fall in line so you can give up that money. But they say, I want my money and I want it now. That's what they're thinking. If you have to wrap your politics in a Bible and a flag, maybe, just maybe your policy ain't right. But they do that because if they know if they wrap it in a Bible and a flag, people will be afraid to question it. They'll be afraid to question. Maybe this policy isn't right. Maybe this isn't what the country should be doing. You're absolutely correct. That policy ain't right. You should be questioning it. You should have a problem with it. You should. Because again, none of this is by accident. It's like that's the best way that I can tell you. None of it's happenstance. None of it we got lucky. No. This is calculated, deliberate. It's a strategy. Y'all think it's something else. It's a strategy. Big time. Now, we don't have to be stuck in the system that we're stuck in. We don't. Because if we have real faith and real patriotism, it would look markedly differently than it looks now. See, a lot of the stuff we see now is the fake stuff. But if we had the real stuff, it would look so different. Because the flip side is this: faith and patriotism can be powerful forces if they're honest, but they got to be honest. And what you find is in America, a lot of patriots don't like to tell the truth about who America is because it don't make them feel good. If everything you say about your country can only make you feel good and you can't say the stuff that doesn't make you feel good, you're a part of the problem. You lying to yourself, baby. And by proxy, because you lie to yourself, you want us to lie to ourselves too. No. I don't want to lie to myself. I don't want to lie to myself. I really don't. Because faith should be about healing, justice, and standing up for the oppressed. But that ain't what faith means to this new batch of conservative religious voter. Right? That's not what that means. That's not what that means. You know, patriotism should be about holding your country to its promises. It should be. And not a blind allegiance, but people get offended by you questioning America. How? It's your country. You're supposed to be able to question it. The fact that you feel like, you should be demanding better for your country. Real talk, you should be demanding better. And the fact that you haven't gotten better is a problem, but you're not going to get better as long as you don't demand it. Real talk, as long as you don't demand it, you're never going to get it. And that's the truth. That is the truth. Because, see, patriotism should, this is what it should be about. It should be about holding your country to its promises. But a lot of people don't want to do that because holding it, when you go to hold it to its promise and you see it hasn't manifested, you're going to feel some type of way. They don't want you doing that. So they tell you, hey, listen, don't worry about it. It's not going to fix its promises. It's okay. Just trust and believe. No. Blind allegiance is not going to help you. Radical love that demands better is where the key to changing everything is. Because you're not going to change it no other way. Yeah. You're not going to change this by anger and hatred. You're not going to change it that way because that's how you won't change it that way. You have to give people a different alternative. But we don't want blind allegiance, but we just want radical love because that will demand better. See, remember, Dr. King wasn't preaching about waiting on heaven. See, that's what the people want you to do now, especially rich people. Rich people, just wait, just wait. No, I don't want to just wait, lady. I want my money and I want it now, like J.G. Whitworth. Like, no, why would I do that? Why would I do that? Dr. King was preaching heaven, right, and justice right here on earth. Right here on earth. You don't have to wait until you pass on to get that justice that you deserve. No. But the powers that be want you to. That's why they want you to buy into the religious stuff. Because if you buy into the religion, it can get you on everything else. They already know this. Frederick Douglass didn't say America is perfect. He said America is, what does that say? America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false in the future. So basically, America been lying. Boom. He told you the quiet part out loud. We been lying. And what we always gonna do, we always gonna lie. Boom. Boom. But guess what, y'all? Guess what, y'all? We can reclaim both, though. But you got to stop letting them be used to keep us quiet. That's the catch. Because you're letting them use these things to keep people quiet who are pressing back against it. You got to stop doing that. Because then you're helping them. You're helping them keep you poor. You're helping them keep you oppressed. That shouldn't be what you want to do for yourself. You shouldn't want to keep yourself poor and oppressed for those people. They don't care about you. I keep telling y'all, rich people, rich and powerful people, they don't think about us. They think about us in the context of, again, our labor and what we can do for them. That's it. They don't think about us in no other way. So we're doing ourselves a disservice when we spend so much time thinking about rich folk. We do ourselves a disservice. Stop doing it. Stand up and hold people accountable for oppressing us and making our lives worse. That's real talk. We can reclaim both, y'all. We got to stop letting them just tell us we can't speak because that's their big thing. One of the big things that I love to do in the live events that I do is use a lot of the conservative principles and mindset and how I interact with conservatives. Because what I find is when you interact with conservatives like a conservative, they don't like conservatism. They don't. Conservatism is a means and a strategy used to get under the skin of people they don't like. But they're not actually real conservatives. And that's why often I've said your biggest conservative, liberals are more conservative than conservatives are. And that's the truth. Liberals are more conservative than most conservatives. Think about it. When I go in my house at night, I lock the door. Or just at any time, I lock the door. Why? Because I don't want somebody just walking all willy-nilly in my house. But a lot of conservatives say, oh, I don't lock the door. I leave my gun by the door because I wish somebody would. Why the hell would I want somebody to break into my house? Like what? That's not my idea of a good ass night, right? But that's how they think. To me, that's a pretty liberal way of thinking. Just walk in your house, leave the door unlocked, and hope somebody walks in. That ain't conservative to me. That's why I always say they're not as conservative as they pretend. Because if they were, they would understand that the real love of your country, the real love of your country, means fighting to make it better. Yeah, not pretending it's already great. Because pretending it's already great doesn't get you anything. What do we get by pretending? And America's always been that, done that mess. We love to make it seem like we are great at everything. I'm going to tell you a couple things we're great at. We great at racism. Racism is homegrown in America. It's some of the best in the world, actually. Some of the best in the world. Top quality racism, you know? But we got plenty of racism, plenty of bad health, plenty of fake news, misinformation, plenty of bad schools. Yeah, plenty of homelessness, plenty of poverty, bad infrastructure. It's a whole lot of things America has a lot of, but it isn't the stuff that we think that we have a lot of. Wake up, America. Specifically, wake up, working class, because the rich people are using us. They're using us, they're taking advantage of us, and they want more. They want more, and they're not going to be done until they get it all. Wake up. Your enemy is not your neighbor. Your enemy is that big money in those boardrooms working to keep you poor, as it's always been. As it's always been. And so I know for some of you, you're asking, like, well, so what do I do with all of this now? You done told me all this stuff. What am I supposed to do with this? Because I don't even understand. I'm going to take one of the first things, open your eyes. Because if you didn't understand what it was before I explained it to you, that's the first thing you got to start doing, keeping your eyes open. And that's the first thing. Another thing you got to start doing, asking hard questions and not allowing people to tell you you can't ask that question. Why not? If you don't have an answer, just tell me you don't have an answer right now today. But to tell me that I can't ask the question makes me feel like you just don't want me to know the truth. Those are the types of conversations y'all need to start having. Okay? Those are the conversations to start having. Because you got to stop confusing silence with faith. Those two things don't go together. Y'all got the game all messed up. Or submission with patriotism. Why do I have to submit to be a patriot? I thought patriots were supposed to be tough and think for themselves, and they're not sheep. They say all of that up until you go to challenge them. We got to start recognizing the patterns. Yeah, you got to recognize the patterns and start calling out the manipulation. And finding power in the truth, even if that truth makes you feel uncomfortable. The problem is so many people don't want to get uncomfortable, and you've got to be willing to get uncomfortable to change what is happening. That's real talk. None of this stuff is going to change by accident. I want to be clear, crystal clear if I wasn't clear before. None of this will change by accident. We have to be deliberate and saying, no, this ain't the life I want for myself or my family. And we have to be deliberate in the actions that we take to ensure that it doesn't happen. That's the catch. Now, my question to America is, how much stamina and how long can you pay attention? Yep. That's the question I'm asking. How long can you pay attention before there starts to be an issue? How long before you pay attention? Because you need to start if you haven't been. I'm going to just tell you, to the believers out there, keep your faith, man. Keep your faith, ladies and gents. But keep your eyes open too. Keep your eyes open. Keep your head on a swivel to see what's going on around you. You have to. And hold people accountable for things that don't make sense. And to the patriots, you need to love your country enough to demand more from it. It just seems to me that patriotism in America is really just about taking a lot of stuff from people. Patriots really don't believe in doing anything for people. And I'm not sure when we got to that. Yeah, I don't know where that actually came from. You know? I'm not sure. But it makes me wonder. Because you're supposed to love your country enough to call it out when it ain't doing the right thing. And the fact that you guys don't feel comfortable enough to call your family out when they're not doing the right thing, who does it help to do that? Who wins when we don't call it what it is? Right? Because the truth is, y'all, they gave us faith to keep us docile. Yeah, they gave you faith so you wouldn't buck back. Yeah, that's why they gave you faith. So you would fall in line. But understand that same faith can be used as fuel if you want to turn it into fire. You got to choose to do something, though. And I'm finding that, like I said before earlier in the podcast, a lot of Americans are looking to be saved. Baby, this is a rescue mission where you got to save yourself. This is a rescue mission. You got to put on your mask before you can save anybody else. But you're going to have to save somebody. It is possible to turn this thing around, but we have to be deliberate in the actions that we take to turn it around, because the people who turned it the other way were deliberate in their actions. None of this stuff is an accident. None of it. None of it. That's the worst part of it all, is that it's by design. You have to imagine, what does a person have to think about the rest of humanity to come up with things like this? To come up with so much suffering. You want to know more about who that person is. You know what I'm saying? I'd want to know more. I'd be like, I want to know, who the hell is this individual? So I thank you guys for joining today's episode of the Straight No Chaser podcast. I want you to share this episode. Start a conversation. Ask your pastor. Ask your neighbor. Ask yourself, is your belief keeping you free, or is it keeping you bound? Yeah, ask yourself the true question, because I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that religion mixed with patriotism is a recipe for disaster. And it's also how people with money exploit people who don't have money. That's what I do know. Is how they exploit people with no money. And what we don't want is to be exploited because we don't possess the financial resources that somebody else does. But we got to change something in society, and the only way to change it is to get yourself involved in government. And you can't do any worse than they're doing. You can actually do better. You can actually do better. I'm just like, I'm so glad I was able to, I didn't mean to get that close to the mic that second. I'm so glad I was able to break it down for you guys, for you to see it in another way, because you need to. This stuff ain't no game. So you need to be able to see it in another way. Because not being able to see it as what it is what's hurting society. It's what hurts us. It's what has taken away our abilities to be actively engaged in the political process and hold people accountable. They're banking on you not doing that, because they don't care about you ultimately. So they're banking on you not doing that. Not at all. Not if they can help it. But we got to keep pushing back. Like I asked you a few minutes ago, is your belief keeping you free, or is it keeping you bound? Because staying bound to something that's doing nothing for you is a complete waste of time, baby. Don't stay bound to things that don't support you. So I want to, thank you guys for for listening to the Straight No Chaser podcast. Because it makes you think about this stuff. How religion and patriotism all go in together to keep you with that other P, poor. So I want to tell you, like I always tell you, don't let nobody live rent free in your head. Don't feed the trolls. And you can accomplish anything you put your mind to as long as you stay consistent. So until next time, stay loud, stay sharp, and stay